I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, a first responder mental health podcast hosted by me, Erin Jane, where we have conversations about what it's like to perform a first responder role and the mental health challenges that can accompany it. Hello and welcome to another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I'm your host, Erin Jane, and today we are joined by Deborah Green, who is a former National Guard member, including experience in the military police. And she is also has almost 30 years experience as a dispatcher, including Sacramento Police Department and the El Dorado County Sheriff's Department. She now spends her time as a mental health advocate for better care for first responders. Thank you for joining us today, Deborah.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm very excited. I just said to you offline, but you are my first dispatcher to come on. So
Awesome.
I've been looking forward to this chat very much.
Oh, good.
So like I said, Deborah has, almost 30 years experience as a dispatcher, but I do want to just sort of touch on your military experience if we can.
Oh, sure. I joined the Army National Guard back in 1986 as a communications specialist because they wouldn't initially let me join as a military police officer because I was too short at the time.
Oh, right.
So, but if I went in and was already in, I could transfer over later. So that's what I did. If that makes any sense at all.
No. Yeah. There's an old boss of mine used to say there's more than one way to skin a cat. So
exactly.
If that's how you got
got in through a loophole. And while I was military police, we were sent over to the Rodney King riots in 1992. So, going into calm the people, and get those riots under control and things. But, when you're trained to go against an enemy, you're not trained to go against your own people. And that's...
Yeah, I can imagine that would feel very conflicting when you're all uniformed up and facing against other Americans.
Oh, yes. It was very different. And at the time, too, they weren't allowing us to put ammunition in our M16s that we were carrying. And, people aren't stupid. They could see that we had no ammunition at all. But luckily, because we were military police, we had sidearms, 45s that were loaded, but those were last resort kind of things. But that was very scary. And while we were in there, we were in Long Beach at the time, I was actually shot at. So that was really scary, being shot at by your own people just for being there.
Oh, wow.
So,
Deb, that's wow. And at that stage, were you guys wearing Kevlar or any protective equipment, or
well, we didn't have no Kevlar. We had flak jackets. So the joke was anything bigger than a beer can won't go through you. So, a lot of us were in law enforcement, outside of the National Guard. And so we all brought our second chance, what we called at the time, second chance vests with us. Mine was a steel plate that I brought with me to wear underneath the Kevlar. And I lost about 10 pounds while I was down there because I was just sweating it out because I had all this stuff on me. So that was kind of... But, nothing prepares you for that. So that kind of started me on that PTSD journey,
Okay. And so then were you in the National Guard the whole time out in California?
Yeah. No, I joined and then went, married my first husband and stayed in Texas for a couple years, and divorced, had a kid, married my second husband, and then came back to California.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So,
And
yes.
I don't know whether we need to clarify for anyone perhaps younger than me what the Rodney King riots were, because I vividly remember watching them as a child on the news and thinking,
Yeah.
wow, that country's gone mad.
Oh.
Do you want to give like a brief, a
Yeah.
brief? And I was like 7 or 8 at the time, so
Oh my gosh. I wasn't much older, so yeah. Um, uh, it was the Los Angeles, I think it was police. I can't,
Mhm.
it's just fuzzy for me. They beat up a guy. He was on PCP and fighting back, but they beat him. I mean, the video was, and it was videotaped at the time when,
Okay.
um, so yeah, it was on a tape. So not
Yeah.
like a
So and so
phone or anything like that,
yeah.
Somebody had literally had that thing on their
And so
shoulder.
the person in question was Rodney King, and he was an African American,
Correct. He was the one
and
that got
then
beat
the
up. And
and it
then
was by, from what I understand, like, was it all white officers? I don't
yes,
remember, to be
and they
honest.
were,
Okay.
I think they were acquitted, and that's what started everything.
Oh, so it all went to trial, and
It
then
all
they
went
were
to
found
trial,
not
and then
guilty, and then
they were found either
and
not
then
guilty or something like that, and that's what started these riots. And it was bad down
okay.
there. It really was.
Yeah.
When we got in there, we went into Long Beach first, and there was a working fire on just about every single city block downtown, and lots of looting going on.
Jesus.
And these
Mhm.
poor business owners were just doing their best to keep people from coming in and looting their
Mhm.
places. So we get
Yeah.
there, and we kind of got Long Beach under control for the most part. And then
Mhm.
our company was sent to downtown LA to be the security for Parker Center, which was the main headquarters for the Los Angeles Police Department at the time.
Oh, okay.
And because I
And
was
so
going through dispatch academy at the same time, I got to be the
mhm.
company's dispatcher. So I was doing hourly checks on people and moving
Yeah.
people around where they needed to go and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So
You really got real hands-on
yeah,
experience in dispatch.
paper and pencil and a radio. I mean, how basic can you get?
Hey, sometimes that might be all you need. And so how long did the riots go for, or how
Oh,
long were you guys
I think we were
like
down there
meant to, like, get the
for,
help?
it was 4 to 6 weeks we were down there.
Oh,
So
wow.
we were in Long Beach for, I think, 3 days, and then we went to LA and we stayed for 2 weeks in downtown LA. And then they
Mhm.
moved us out. They were pulling people out. Um, and we stayed for a couple weeks on the Marine base that was out there. And I can't
Okay.
remember where exactly that is. I apologize. It's LA. I don't keep tabs.
That's okay.
But they kept
But
us
was
out
it
there just as it was calming down. They just
okay,
pulled
yeah.
us back, but they kept us in reserve down there just in case it started back up again. And then
Mhm.
then we came home, and then I finished my academy with the police
Okay.
department.
Yeah. And so I listened to another podcast that you were on recently, and you sort of mentioned that was like a bit of a turning point for you in regards to your desire to remain in the
Yeah.
National Guard. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just because my son was, oh my gosh, he was 3. And
Oh God.
my husband at the time had gone to Saudi Arabia before I went down to LA. So he was in Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield. Um,
Wow.
and it was okay for the kids to have him gone. But when mom got
Yeah.
pulled away for that amount of time, they didn't handle it well. And I said,
Yeah.
I'm going to, instead of making this a career, I'm going to pull back and do something else that, that's not going to tear me away from my kids. So
Yeah.
that's what I did.
Oh no. And as you know, I'm the mum of 2, and my youngest is 4, so I can't even imagine being pulled away from my kids for 6 weeks like that. Like, that's,
Yeah,
and I know military people do it all the time, and I take my hat off to them, because I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. Well, even as a first responder, you're kind of away, but not away from your kids.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
your
No, very
your
much
shift
so.
makes it so you can't do certain things, but you're still there for them.
100%.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so, talk to me, Deb, about what actually got you interested in becoming a dispatcher in the first place.
um, I don't know. I think it was just luck of the draw because I was applying to Sacramento Sheriff at the time, also to become a deputy with them. Um,
Oh,
but
okay.
I saw this and I was like, oh, what the heck? Let's try it out. And I couldn't type worth beans, but but I kind of grew with the job. But at the time,
Yeah.
and so I just practiced and did what I can. I was a what was I doing? I was working retail at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, it just came up and I went, what the heck? Why not? And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they hired me. So I guess I did okay.
And so was the process like, did you have to get hired by someone and then go through the academy, or you went through the academy
Mm,
and then had with the experience for then someone to go through the process to
right.
hire you?
They hired Sacramento Police put on their own academy, so they would hire a group of dispatchers and then
Okay.
put them through the academy, and then whoever came through finished the academy would go out
Mm-hmm.
onto the actual floor and start training.
Oh, okay.
So they kind of
And
gave you a real good base. So it was
mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if it was 8. I think it was I, I think it was like 3 months training that we went through, 3 or 4 months training, because I came back from LA as everybody was graduating. So I still had to go through some of the academy at a more
Okay.
accelerated rate than
Mm.
everybody else was allowed to.
Yeah.
But I made it through training up until about 11 months. And I had a call that I just couldn't keep up with. And, the radio portion was a little much for me at the time because Sacramento
Okay.
is not a big city, not a big metropolitan
Mm-hmm.
area at the time. It was a smaller city, but it was still busy. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
they let me go out on probation. So I immediately
Mm-hmm.
started applying to other agencies again because they said that um I was a good dispatcher, but maybe a smaller agency would have been better. So that's what I did. I went
Okay.
to some of the smaller agencies and applied there.
And that's how
Um
you ended up at El Dorado?
yes.
Okay.
So yeah, that was and I stayed there for 27 years.
Yeah, and that's an incredible amount of time to stay at the one place. Like, um, and so just explain to our listeners. So is that you taking like 911 calls and then dispatching the jobs? Is it just purely for police, or are you handling firefighting, EMS, anything like that?
When I started there, we were a centralized dispatch. So we did El Dorado County Sheriff, Placerville Police, and El Dorado County Fire at the time.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it was
Mm-hmm.
which was really nice. When you have everybody in the same room, you can just yell across the room, "Hey, I need an ambulance for this call," and you're all on the same this, and it's so much quicker. And so
Yeah.
while I was working there, we first lost the fire dispatch to Cal Fire, which is a
Okay.
state fire. So they went and they had their own dispatch, and then Placerville
Mm-hmm.
Police eventually left to do their own thing. They got a grant to have a dispatch center put in their department. And
Okay.
so I ended up just being on dispatching the sheriff. And,
Okay.
you would think losing all these people along the way, the job would get easier. No, the county was growing and it,
Yeah.
stayed the same, if not got busier as the years went on.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you know, having such an incredible length of a career, it makes me think that you've probably seen and heard absolutely everything.
Yes, absolutely.
Not that I feel like you can give us a snapshot of what 27 years worth is like, but, you know, share with us like a bit about, you know, your time there.
Oh my gosh. So when I started, we had two screens, and they were
Mm-hmm.
DOS. So we called them green screens. They had a little bit of color in them, but not much.
Yeah.
And uh, our phone system was, you know, push the phone, pick up the handset. Radios were everywhere and push button, you know. I mean, it was like a little space station that we were sitting in when I first started back in 1994. Then
Yeah.
as it grew, our screen numbers grew and our computers grew. So when I finally retired, we had 10 screens, 3 keyboards, 3 mice each.
Damn. Wow.
It was quite, you know, I mean, we could, the 911 system grew with cell phone use. And so we were able to
Yeah, of course.
pinpoint people and map things. And, you know, where when I started, you didn't have that technology yet, much less cell phones. I mean,
Yeah.
cell phones were not even really a thing yet. And trying to get people to tell us where they were, trying to find lost
Yeah.
hikers and things like that was just, it took so much time. Whereas when we had lost hikers right before I left, hey, we knew exactly where they were. We saw them on the map and, you know, we're able to get to them quicker. So, you know,
Yep.
it was nice.
Technology has definitely advanced in that time in so many wonderful ways.
And I worked in it's a rural county. So it goes from
Okay.
at the edge of Sacramento, which is more urban, into national forest land. It goes all the way to Nevada, South Lake Tahoe. So it's a rather large county, and so we have national forests and, you know, the deep woods and urban, and it's quite an interesting environment to work in because you're doing all
Yeah.
sorts of things and working
Yeah,
with a
I
lot
can
of different
imagine.
agencies. So I think it was an awesome place to work. I really do.
And did you do like 12-hour shifts? What was the shift schedule like?
Yeah, we did. So when we did 12s, so I worked 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, or Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then a 4-hour shift on Wednesday. So everybody worked
Oh,
on Wednesday and did some sort of modified shift then.
okay.
I think they've
And then you would
fixed
have
it now.
the next.
And then
Okay.
I'd
So
had the
everyone
next 3
had
days
set
off.
shifts?
Yeah. Yeah. So we had 4 teams, which was kind of nice.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
you could pick your
Yeah.
schedule for like a whole year, and it was great.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be very, like very helpful in terms of like organizing childcare and all that kind of thing.
Oh, most definitely. And, you know, with me working nights and my husband working day shift, we didn't need childcare at all, which was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Though my
Yeah. No,
children did not see me.
I can imagine. No, I went through the dispatcher process here like a few years ago, and like I got through and they offered me the job, and then I couldn't end up taking it because like my husband he's a firefighter, and he works 24-hour shifts a week, and it's like a
Oh my gosh,
rotating
yeah.
schedule. And then the dispatcher shifts were 2 days, 2 afternoons, 2 nights, 4 days off. So we were like, how do we like
Oh my
try to like,
gosh, that's crazy.
and yeah, and it would be like, you know, if we wanted someone to look after our kids, like no 1 week would ever be the same. And I was just like,
Yeah, I never
felt like it was
understood
all
the
just a little
rotating
bit too
shifts
hard.
like that. That just messes with your whole physical
Yeah.
being.
Yeah. It was just going to be a little bit too much like hard work, but I have, you know, such respect for what you guys do. And I was telling Deb offline, like I have a really good friend of mine who is a former police officer, and she's a dispatcher back home in Australia. So we call, instead of calling 911, we call 000. So she's a call taker back there, and even being a police officer, you end up going in and into town and interacting with them if you have to get like the call records and all that kind of thing. And like you're saying, the giant screens, and they're talking to this person and they're talking to this and they're dispatching that job. Like, it's so much coordination. I don't know if I have that.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's amazing, and you could be doing nothing. I mean, I would take knitting in for the middle of the night, because there's not much going on at 2 and 3 in the morning in a rural county.
Yeah.
But boy, when the poo hits the fan, let me tell you, the stuff was flying off desks, and everybody was right there, and everybody knew what to do, if that makes sense. So if the person running the radio relied on everybody else in the room to help them out to get things done, requests that were coming in and things like that. So yeah, we really worked great as a team. But boy,
that's great.
It was quite interesting in the middle of the night, everybody's just chilling, watching a movie or something, and then it goes crazy. So yeah.
And I have to ask, and it might be before the time that you work, so forgive me if it was, but there was a famous sort of serial rapist case. It was like the East Area rapist.
Oh yeah, the East Area rapist.
And he's obviously been located and caught within the last couple of years. Like, was that something that you were aware of when you were, or am I getting my dates mixed up?
Well, actually, that started in the 70s and 80s, but I actually lived here in this county when that was happening. So, and actually one of his last victims lived a couple blocks from our house.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was kind of scary, but yeah, it was a really strange time, Sacramento was just like this just quiet little community, and we had this happening, and people were buying locks, people were buying these stronger doors, getting rid of windows in their doors. It just became, when they talk about childhood trauma, that guy caused some childhood trauma. Let me tell you what.
I can imagine.
But yeah, it was strange because you'd have friends come over and they just walk in the front door, and then it was like all of this happening, and you didn't go out past dark. You didn't, it was just it was a very scary time.
Yeah, and I remember, I think I read a book, and I definitely listened to a whole podcast series about it. And
and I think with Michelle,
and it turned out that he was either like a former police officer, and so he had all of this knowledge. And it was the thing that really got to me. I mean, obviously, anyone being sexually assaulted or assaulted in any way is awful. So I did take nothing away from that. It was the psychological torture, because he would then phone his victims after the fact.
Yes.
Like that was the aspect that I just found so incredibly.
Well, and he just lived across the river from where I'm at now. So but it was nice that we've been able to close that case. But our county was the one that did the J.C. Lee Dugard case. I don't know if you remember the kidnapped girl. Yeah, that was our county that did that. So we had a little file in dispatch to put copies of tips.
Really?
So we would have to fill out a form and photocopy it and send it off to the detectives, and then we kept a copy. And so when she was found,
she was taken for like a really long time.
I took this. This is the tab on the file.
Wow.
When we destroyed the file or sent the file to records to be stored. I kept that. And someday, if I ever meet her, because she still lives in the area, I'm going to give her that and tell her that we didn't give up on her. So, and what was interesting was the sheriff at the time when she was found was the responding officer to when she was first kidnapped. So he was he was there for the closure of the case, which was really awesome.
My goodness, that's
So
incredible because she was gone for like years and years, wasn't
19
she?
years, yeah.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
So that
Wow.
was our case. We've had some interesting ones along the way that, like, I'll be watching TV. I think there's a show called Snapped, or some of those
Oh
young
yeah.
detectives or things like that on ID channel, and we have a lot from our county, which was like, wow, we have some really we've had some really crazy ones.
I
So
know, Deb, I feel like you've been giving us this like false perception of your community because you're like, oh, it's this little sleepy town, El
it's
Dorado
just little.
Sheriff's Department, and really full of
Yeah, we have
kidnappers
some
and
really
rapists.
really good ones. Yeah, it's
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
wild, because I sit there and I'll have the ID channel on or something and just have sound in the background in
yeah.
the house sometimes, and then I'll hear a voice, and I'm going, wait, I know that voice. Why do I run over and it's somebody that I worked with? So it's like, oh my gosh.
Oh dear, I'm surprised you haven't found yourself on one of those shows yet,
Oh,
Deb.
no, no, no. Well, there's one, but yeah, they don't know how involved I was in that case. So we'll just keep it at that.
Oh, okay, is that for another podcast episode?
That's for the whole another podcast episode. Yeah.
That's all right. We can get to that. And so we've obviously mentioned the fact that Deb is retired from her dispatching career. And as whether you've picked up or not, as she's been speaking, she retired after a diagnosis of complex PTSD. If you're comfortable, would you mind sort of sharing a little bit about your diagnosis and how that came about?
Well, it started out so in October of 2019, we lost a deputy while I was working the radio for his channel.
Okay.
It was an ambush at a marijuana grow. Um, there were three other deputies with him that survived. One was his ride along, actually, that was riding along to he was what do they call it, applicant ride along. So he was applying to our department and riding along to see what it was like. Luckily, he was armed, he was a deputy in another county,
Yeah.
and had a sidearm with him. But when they got to the call, they talked to the person who called us, who said that somebody was in his marijuana grow,
Okay.
possibly stealing, because we, here in California, we can have, I think it's up to 12 plants. I think it's changed, but at the time you
Okay.
could have up to 12 plants growing on your property. So, we went out thinking, there's a certain amount of caution that you have to take when dealing with that kind of situation.
Yeah.
But they went out and they were shot at by the guys that were out there, and they shot my deputy and
Okay.
killed him. So while I'm on the radio, I'm trying to keep, I knew somebody was shot. I didn't know, we weren't sure what was going on yet, and trying to raise him on the radio, and we couldn't. Then I heard the sergeant go on scene. So we sent, we were sending everybody to go out there.
Yeah.
When you have shots fired, it's everybody. But a lot of my guys were 30 minutes away because it's such a big county, and where the call was at, we had to call other counties to come from other directions to get there before my guys got there. So they were able to get him on an ambulance and get him to the hospital. And when you hear that, it's like, okay, he's going to be okay. So you put all that in the back of your mind. And I'm just concentrating on keeping the rest of them safe out there, and getting them help. And in the middle of all of this mess, and we've got the detective, everybody's coming in. Basically, we called in everybody in the department to get there. It's a small enough department, everybody comes in. With other agencies and everything. in the middle of all of this mess, I've got the SWAT team, I've got a helicopter going up. We get a call from the hospital for the patrol lieutenant who tells us that he had passed away. And the only reason he called us at dispatch was because somebody at the hospital had posted it on Facebook, and he didn't want us finding out that way.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Who would fucking do that? Fuck's sake.
Yeah. So it was somebody that was in the ER at the time that posted it on Facebook. So they had to get people out to his parents' house, get people out to his, his wife, and everybody. It's so much quicker than it would have gone anyway. So I'm there in tears, just sobbing, but having to try and keep calm so that everybody else out in the field doesn't know what's going on until we've gotten suspects in custody. So 3 hours of having to do this caused the single incident PTSD. But you have a career of shootings and things you're listening to on the phone and things critical incidents and whatever. So I had that complex PTSD, but then it was aggravated to the point I couldn't work anymore because of the single incident.
Yeah.
That just, the straw that broke the camel's back. And I lasted about a year before my psychiatrist said no more.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that sounds like such a harrowing experience for you, Deb, and I can imagine if you've worked for that department for so long, you probably knew that deputy. And
oh gosh, I had just talked to him downstairs on my break. He had come in late, so we were talking downstairs like not even 2 hours before I sent him on that call. And my last ride along, because we were able to do ride alongs if the staffing permitted, my last ride along was with him also. So, I just keep that close to my heart, and
Of course. I'm so sorry for your loss. That was department stuff.
The single worst thing that has ever happened to me. But it also, the department really came through with their critical care afterwards, and having critical incident stress management debriefings right away with those of us that, were on dispatch. So we had our own little meeting before we left the building. We had another one with therapists a few days later. We were allowed as much time as we wanted to take care of us. I had already been in therapy. So I made my own personal appointments right afterwards. That was the first thing I did when I got home was make appointments and say, no, I need to get in. And I'm just, I sometimes wonder how much worse would I have been had I not already been in therapy and learning those tools. And just thinking I wouldn't have I don't think I'd even be able to have gone back for that year.
Yeah.
But learning the tools and all that helped me a little bit, but in the end it just there's a point you can't do it anymore, and it takes sorry.
No, please don't apologize, not in the slightest. Take your time.
Yeah, it just, I think just allowing myself to come to the realization that let's let some younger people do this from now on, and let's go and take care of ourselves. And that was the final, what I had to hash out to do my final retirement, because I finally retired in 2021. And yeah.
But that's a really important realization that only you could come to.
Oh, absolutely. You can fight all you want, but is it good for you in the end? I mean, and I think the best thing, and also my grandson was born a month before this incident happened. or a month
Okay.
before the psychiatrist signed me out. So he was born in 2020. So he kind of saved me. So I had something to get up in the morning and you know go and get that little guy, and we did walks and went to the park, and he got me out and
Mm-hmm.
had gave me a purpose
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
having to sit at home and dwell on any mistakes I could have made or did make, or all of that stuff that goes on in your mind when you're at home sitting in a box
Yeah.
with your own thoughts.
Yeah. No, and purpose is important for everyone, and as well, like, from everything you just disclosed, like, there's also, so much grief that would have surrounded, like, that whole of that experience for you, like, not only
Oh
like the
gosh, yeah.
grief of losing a friend and a colleague, the grief of not being in a position to do more, the grief of ending your career, like, you know what I mean? And grief shows up in so many different ways, and it's
Yes.
so multifaceted, and it can present in, anger and so many other emotions. Like, it's so complex.
Well, and that it manifested with me in a lot of anger, and
Mm-hmm.
my supervisor at the time wasn't trained to see the signs. She just thought I was an angry person, and but she wasn't a good supervisor as it was. And so she went down that disciplinary route with me. So you're adding these
Yeah.
performance improvement plans to this person that's having
Jesus.
mental health issues. And luckily, I had another supervisor that wasn't my direct supervisor that was training to be a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And she recognized everything that was going on. And she sat me down, got me into the workman's comp for what was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much saved my life, my career.
Wow. And so was this like after you had come back, after your friend had been lost and shot?
So we came back. God, how long? I took those 4 days. They were my regular days off anyway when this happened. I think I only ended up taking 1 day off, but I did a lot of therapy and peer support during that week that I was off,
Mm-hmm.
and came
Yep.
back. And so I didn't allow myself enough grace or time or
We
anything like
rarely
that right
do.
after, because we were in I was, as a dispatcher, I was, I guess, raised in a different, where you just sucked it up and you came back and you did it. If you were
Yep.
in a critical incident, we had an officer involved shooting where 3 of our deputies were shot, and those girls that worked that day were expected to be back that next day.
Wow.
They weren't allowed, they weren't pulled off the radio when the incident slowed down. They were
Yep.
just, and there wasn't any mental health or critical incident training or stress management, nothing. Just come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
If you can't handle it, you shouldn't be in this job, is basically what you were told.
And is
And
that from like the get-go? Like, is that what you
oh
know
gosh,
from
yeah.
the start of your career?
Yeah. If you can't handle this, you shouldn't be here. And so looking back, going, my God, what were we doing to our people? Because it wasn't just dispatchers that were doing that was expected of. That was the officers, that was the firefighters, that was the medics, even nurses, doctors in emergency rooms. If you can't handle it, then get out of this profession. And
Yep.
we lost so many good people that way, whether it was people quitting because they just couldn't handle it, or being fired because of things, or even as far as suicide, and there's good people being lost.
Yeah. Very much so. And like you're saying, sometimes as dispatchers, you're actually the first point of contact,
Yes.
someone just comes across something on the street, but yet more often than not, you guys can be, you know, unfairly kind of forgotten about or not included when, you know, it does come time to a debriefing or, you know,
Yeah,
all that
most
kind of thing.
definitely. A lot of debriefings, even as we're coming, were tactical debriefings. They weren't even mental health debriefings. It was,
Yeah.
what did we do? How can we do it better? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we were involved in those, but it still wasn't the same, you know.
Yeah.
My first officer involved shooting back, oh good gracious, when was that? Early 2000s, I think it was. I didn't know if he had been shot or the suspect had been shot until the next day. And,
Jeez.
you know, nobody calls me at home to tell me he's okay. I just, okay, we'll find out tomorrow, you know, and I'm driving home just crying and I can't see through all the tears. I have an hour commute to go home, and, you know,
Oh, wow.
good God, how many people could I have killed? But, you know, I mean, and what are we doing to our people, allowing this to happen, you know,
Yeah.
and not not doing the debriefs like they should have. And I think
Yeah.
that's why we become crusty, grumpy old dispatchers and cops and firefighters and
The salty old school ones, I know.
yes.
But so from what you were telling me, that there was, you know, a shooting where 3 officers was shot, and that the aftercare, that was terrible. But then from what you
hmm
said, after the most recent one in 2019, when you unfortunately lost your friend, it sounded like the aftercare and the support was actually so much better. Like,
Oh, it was,
was there like a big overhaul of the system? Like, what changed in
yeah,
that time?
there was a big overhaul of the system within the last, I'm thinking from about 2015 to when we had the incident happen. There was a big overhaul of peer support, and people were becoming more aware of suicides and things like that. But we'd
Mhm.
also had a really crappy year here in California, and actually throughout the nation, for officers being killed that year. Sacramento
Oh,
area,
really?
we lost 4 within a year, um, in just our area,
Jesus.
of being killed on duty. And, you know, so
Gosh.
it was rough, you know. And
Yeah.
one of the gals that was killed was actually a fiance of one of our deputies at our department. So he had not only that, but then
Awful.
we had this one right after, and he was just a mess, you know. I mean, but nobody takes into consideration, so you have your core participants, but nobody considers, you know, the rings of
Yeah.
of
The
other
waves of
people
all the
that,
ripples.
yeah,
Yeah.
the other people that are affected by this, you know. um
Yeah.
in our little corps, one of the deputies didn't come back at all. One
Hmm.
deputy was gone for a while. He'd come back, he left, he'd come back. And then the other one, who was the ride along with the other department, he never went back. But they wouldn't, because of circumstances, his medical retirement was held up. So he didn't get that until, I think, last year. So took him 3 years to fix that.
Jesus.
And it's just, it feels like, because this happened to us on duty and now we're all gone, there's no aftercare.
Yeah.
You know, you're gone. So nobody needs to check up on you. And
Yeah. Deal with it yourself, sort of thing.
yeah. And so, you know, that's one thing I'm pushing for is, you know, we need some sort of aftercare or something, that when you have this incident and these people aren't coming back, that you're still checking on them, still making sure that things are going okay for them. And if they need help, get them the resources that they need.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and
Because I
that's so
just feel kind
incredibly
of,
important.
you know, dumped. It's like I was
Yeah.
this person for 27 years at this department, and then okay, thanks, have a nice day. Not even a retirement party, not even a card thanking me for, the years of service, nothing. Just, okay, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. And
That's so disappointing.
but I'm in a much better place now, and I have a part-time job with a fantastic boss, and it's such a non-toxic work environment. It's wonderful. So
That's good.
and working with, I do childcare for my grandson, and
Mhm.
what else could anyone ask for?
Yeah. No, and it sounds like you've definitely found your way since leaving, even though it's been challenging for you.
It took me a while, but it took me a little over a year, but I'm really enjoying this new person.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And is your husband retired too, or is he still working?
Oh no, he's still working. I'm only 56.
Oh, he's got ages then.
He's got ages. He's got ages to go. So yeah, but yeah, I just um, it's been tough, but we're
Mhm.
we're trudging along.
Yeah. And so from what you just said, it sounds like everyone who was involved in that job, like within what, 12 or 18 months was gone.
Was gone. Yeah, of the 4 people that in the main. But
Yeah.
there's also ripple effects. We lost one to suicide a year after. And you
Oh.
wonder, was that because of that? I mean, he was a veteran also, so he saw some different stuff.
Mhm.
But I mean, was that a catalyst? And you'll never know.
Yeah.
And
And I mean, I can imagine that must have shook, like within 12 months, to have one officer killed in the line of duty and then one lost to suicide. That must have shaken your
yeah,
department so
it
severely.
was it was bad. And what so we need to take better care of our first responders, and we need to start doing it when they first get in. And change the environment, and not be so hard ass on them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so, what, obviously, like, before all of this got to this point for you, and understandably, you said that you had sort of started therapy a few years before this incident. Outside of therapy, like, what did you or your colleagues do? Like, if you weren't given any official resources or support or anything like that, did you guys like just naturally develop your own sort of coping skills and mechanisms? Did
Oh
you
gosh,
talk
yeah.
to each other? Like, what was
Yeah,
that
we
like?
would work, talk things out. Well, I mean, you're sitting in a room with these other people for 12 hours, and it's good to vent things out. But then there
Of
came a
course.
point in time where management didn't want us to talk. They said, "No, you can't do that." And it's like, "Why not?"
What, like, as in
It's
on
called
shift or?
yeah, they didn't want us talking on shift. And it's like, okay, what's the reasoning behind this? Thinking we were gossiping or something, but it was like, no, we're trying to like process all of this stuff.
Yeah,
Because I mean, it's heavy. You can be
of
going
course.
from, dealing with the murder to dealing with that 3-year-old calling on 911 to say hi, to dealing with, something else. You don't know what that next phone call is going to be like. And how many, and then even in these larger agencies, how many dispatchers are going through several traumas in a night? I mean, this is stuff that the normal person doesn't want to listen to,
Yeah.
or doesn't know that's happening. I mean, it's not normal to listen to this stuff all the time.
No, it's not. It's very much not. And so what did you sort of personally find like helped you the most?
Well, for years, we had my in-laws lived in a place out in the middle of the national forest in Northern California,
Oh,
that
okay.
no phones, no nothing, We had
Yeah.
running water and electricity, and that was pretty much it. And we'd
Yeah.
go out there and we would be disconnected from everything. And
Yeah.
it was so great just to go out there and just have a clear mind. And unfortunately, things happened, and after 2010, we stopped going out there. Both my in-laws had passed, and it's not the same, and so we stopped going out there. So I think that kind of added two things. And then in 2015, I was diagnosed with a aortic valve issue on my heart, and it was in severe stenosis from a genetic defect. So instead of 3 leaves, I had 1, and it was slowly closing on itself. So I got diagnosed and had open heart surgery within 60 days.
Wow.
Right after my first granddaughter was born. So yeah. So I had
You've
that.
had a busy few years, Deb.
I have. I have had a busy, but that one, that's how I started therapy, was because of the open heart surgery, because there's things that go along with heart surgery and being on a bypass machine that kind of mess with you, as far as depression, anxiety, and things like that. So so I had a good start on therapy, and I was going really well, and then life has a way of messing you up.
Yeah, no, understandable. And by the sounds of it, losing kind of that one place that you felt like you could go and just completely switch off from. Like we have a similar place in Vermont where, like very basic running water and electricity, but no signal, absolutely nothing. And, it takes a while to kind of get into the vibe of it, but it's so peaceful once you're out there.
Oh, absolutely.
But losing that and then having, your surgery, which put you through a lot, and then, having all of these kind of critical incidents and culminating in the loss of your friend. I mean, it's a lot for one person to take. And on top of that, we're, like you're saying, a 27-year career in dispatching, plus your National Guard and military experience on top of that. Like it all, I know that like the little C stands for complex, but sometimes I feel like it should stand for, cumulative, because so many first responders end up with that kind of diagnosis, because it's that cumulative effect and building upon building upon building. And that's when you're saying, like, even this one incident of you losing your friend is absolutely like horrific and could be the straw that broke the camel's back, even if it was that first thing. No wonder it was that straw for you as well,
Oh yeah. I mean, it just, you just, the layers upon layers, sometimes something's got to give. And yeah, it did.
Yeah. No, and that's very understandable. But it sounds like you've got some good strategies in place now.
Oh yeah. And I'm still in therapy, and I'm still doing things, and I got I have 4 grandkids out here now. So, yeah.
Oh, lovely.
So yeah, it's nice. And, I just kind of taking things slow, and I actually did a 12-hour shift at work a few weeks ago, and I was wondering, how the heck did I do this before?
Yeah.
Like, wow, I don't think I could do this again. It just, you get to that, okay, I'm just kind of moving along with life, like sitting on a raft and just going with the flow, and it's so much nicer. And I actually this year I've been working on my physical health, and I was diagnosed with severe sleep apnea. So I'm on a CPAP machine for sleep, and I have not had sleep like this in years. It's absolutely wonderful. And so, it's just amazing how much that helps your mood too when you actually get a good night's sleep.
Of course. Be very restorative for your system if it hasn't been used to getting as much as you actually need.
Oh, yeah. and my doctor was like, well, how much are you getting now? I go, oh, about 7 hours now. And she goes, what were you getting before? I said, oh, maybe 6 hours at the most.
Yeah.
you know, four,
It
4 to
makes a
6 hours a
massive difference.
night. Yeah.
Oh, not
Because I
enough.
mean, you go to bed, but you're up and down all night long. And now it's just,
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
that's good. And so talk to me about sort of where you are, or what you're doing in terms of wanting to be an advocate for better mental health for first responders. I know that, you've been on like multiple podcasts. Is it a matter of you sort of just going out there and sharing your story? Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. I getting out and sharing my story is a main part, because not everyone listens to every podcast. So I'm
Yeah.
going to find that person that goes, hey, wait a minute. Thank you. I thought I was alone.
Yeah.
But also, um, there's a bill in Congress, and forgive me, I'm still trying to get information on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's a bill in Congress for first responders' mental health that I just found
Okay.
out about. And so I contacted my congressman just this morning, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of going to see how I can help with that. And if it requires a trip to
Yeah.
Washington, then sign me up, because I'll be there.
Yeah.
And I'll bring along as many people to share it with as I can. But
Yeah.
getting out there, and maybe public speaking is in the works for me, who knows. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to get the word to the top cops, the sheriffs, the chiefs, everybody, to say, hey, it's coming, it needs to come from them.
Yeah.
If they're not there to support us, anything we do grassroots is not going to work as well
Or
as
it's,
it should.
yeah, it won't have the opportunity to be implemented. Yeah.
Right. So if you're a top cop and you think that your department is smooth sailing and great, take a step back and look again. Because it probably isn't. And you need to look at who's going out with mental health, and why, and what are things that you can change in your department to make things better, getting people trained, and not just a small portion of your people trained on critical incident stress management, but everybody needs to be trained on it, because it's
Yep.
actually a good class personally. um
Mm-hmm.
I think it was
Yeah.
the best class that I was ever sent to. And
Yeah, I did it back in June, and it was really, so worthwhile.
I met a really good friend through that. So we need to do better, and we need to do better by our employees and line staff, and not just concentrate on the cops on the road or the firefighters on the road, but dispatchers, and also the concentric circles around things. So the people that are working in that building when something happens, so your records personnel, your secretaries, you need to look at them also, because they're going to be affected by the same things.
Yeah.
Whether
Yeah.
or not they're right there when it happens, but they're affected also. So it's the entire department as a whole. And we need to do better by our employees.
Yeah. Sounds like you're really advocating for just like a complete, like a holistic approach in terms of like you're saying, like the each circle comes out, each ripple, like each layer of people who are connected by each other, that everyone needs support.
Absolutely. And utilize retirees.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have somebody that can do something, see it, you have a retiree that maybe wants to come in and do some volunteer work or something to help out, and make us feel like we're
Yeah.
wanted, and not just cut off because we retired.
Yeah.
Unless that's what that person wants, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, but that is like a really important aspect, though, that I think you're mentioning, that sort of not everyone talks about that. When you leave a very identifiable job like that, and especially if you haven't left under under the circumstances of either how you imagined or in the way that you wanted and all that kind of thing, you kind of feel like you're left out in the dark a little bit. And like you're saying, there's no one calling and checking in, and your position would have been filled, and people, like calls to 911 are still coming in, jobs are still being dispatched, but you're not just what you did, you're still a person that has feelings and thoughts and still deserves like that level of support as well, and everyone does in that respect.
Absolutely. And my two best friends were, one of them is a retiree from the department also, so we kind of support each other,
Formed your
which
own
is
little
really
clique,
good. Yeah, we formed our own little mental health support group for all the departments in the area. We do a lot to like, I have a fire station near me, and I've adopted them, so on holidays and whatnot, or just because, I'll bake cookies and take them over and say hi to the guys and make sure that they're doing okay, and that they know where their resources are, and yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And then I think as well, that's also, giving you purpose while still staying sort of within that first responder realm.
Absolutely.
And that's sort of something like I definitely understand. Like, I left what I thought was going to be my career forever at 30, and I moved over here, and I'm like married to a fellow first responder, and still a lot of my friends still are. But that's why, like, doing what I do, you kind of still feel drawn back to that community, and giving back in that way. I think it does give you purpose and makes you still feel a part of it in a special way.
Most definitely, and it just it's nice to see the smile on their faces when I bring them stuff. So
firefighters liking free food, get out of here.
Oh my gosh, yes. But we also do like big times, and we'll take them to we always think of the dispatchers first. So if we can get stuff to dispatchers to make them happy, yes, that's our first thing.
Yeah. No, I love that. I absolutely love that. That's good. All right. Well, I do want to say thank you for your time today, Deb. I really appreciate it. I normally finish the podcast off by asking our guests 2 questions. So the name of the podcast is I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness, which is basically sort of about the idea that the roles that we perform, whether it's being a dispatcher, police officer, firefighter, anything like that, we are exposed to, these unique level of darkness that most people don't even really know exists. So the question number 1 is, what do you do to hold space for your darkness?
Sometimes I try to forget about my darkness.
That's okay too.
I try to work through it. I mean, I'm never going to heal from this, so it's always going to be there. But I want to go from crying about it to having good memories about it. So that's where I'm still working on that, but as you can see. But yeah, I'm still a work in progress, but yeah, I'm making that space still.
That's good. And I think everyone is still a work in progress, so I wouldn't feel too bad about that. I think if you aren't still trying to better yourself and improve, like, I think it's good. You're not sitting there feeling defeated by it. You're like, no, I'm going to push through, and I think that's really important.
Yep.
And the second question is, what can someone do, like someone that you love or that loves you, what can they do to support you or help you to hold space for that darkness?
Well, my husband does it already. He's been there for me, and he listens, and that's all I need is somebody to respect my boundaries, because I've placed a lot out there in the last couple of years. I'm not the yes woman and people pleaser that I used to be. And I have to do things at my own speed now, and just listening. That's all they have to
Yep.
do, and respect my boundaries.
Yep. No, that's wonderful, and I'm really happy to hear that you've got, someone important and special in your life who can do that for you. It's really
Yeah,
important.
my husband's been my rock. He's great.
Was he the one who was in the military?
No. The one
Okay.
I'm married to now is my third husband.
Jesus, Deb,
Yes.
I can't keep up with you.
Yeah, and a partridge in a pear tree. Yeah, I've got quite a list going on here.
Well, it sounds like he makes you happy and supports you in the way
Yes,
that you need. So that's really
very
all that
much
matters,
so.
isn't it? Well, there you go. That's wonderful. All right, Deb. Well, thank you again for taking the time to come and speak with us and to share your experience and your truth, and to not, be ashamed of putting yourself out there, because again, that's kind of like the whole purpose of this podcast. Is I feel like sharing our stories and just putting it out there for anyone who wants to hear it. Someone's going to take something away from it, and it's going to help someone. It's going to help the right person in the right time, on the right moment. And if we just help one person, that's what
all
it's all
I want
about.
is to help that one person,
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been
thanks
another
so much.
episode of This has been another episode of I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. I've been your host, Erin Jane. And as always, let me listen in a way you've never been heard. Cheers. Hi guys, it's Erin Jane here. Firstly, thank you for listening to I Will Hold Space for Your Darkness. This podcast really is for you, the listener, and I hope you're finding as much value in listening to these conversations as I am in having them. If you'd like to offer any feedback, suggest a subject matter, are interested in being a podcast guest, or would like to get in contact to receive first responder life and wellness coaching services, please reach out. You can find me on Instagram at Erin Jane Coaching, or my website www.erinjanecoaching.com. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'm so grateful to have you as part of this darkness community. Cheers.